Good afternoon, everyone. This is an interesting area to give a presentation. This is a first for me, so hopefully if you can't hear me, just kind of give me a thumbs up and then I'll make sure that I take my voice louder. So as we're talking about coming to the stage today, I have been on tour for the last 2 months. My book, The Win-Win Workplace, How Thriving Employees Drive Bottom Line Results, came out on March 11th. And what's been so amazing about putting out this book is that I've been to about 15 cities now, actually talking to workers about what they're looking for in their workplaces, but also talking about employers who are thinking that how they can keep their A+ talent. And so I'm gonna work you through that presentation today. So in life, this is a lemonade stand. So what do you do when life gives you lemons? What do you do? Anyone have an answer? Let me see if I can hear you. Use your outside voice. You throw them at someone. What else do you do if life gives you lemonade? You make lemonade. Or if you're in the workplace, it means that you can get a new job, right? That's another thing that you can do. And this is a story that I tell to people early on in life. My first job was at a lemonade stand. And the funny part about that, I was about 10 years old. I was selling lemonade cups for about 10 cents each. And then I had a contractor who was working on the street. He came up to me and said, "If I give you $20, will you give us unlimited lemonade for the rest of the day?" And I thought, okay, 10 cents, $20. I took the $20. 6 hours later, I was still giving free lemonade. And what I learned in this moment from my first job is the importance of negotiating and knowing your value. And so this is gonna be a theme that we talk about today. With my research with the Win-Win Workplace, it's about those employers who are understanding the value of their employees, and for employees who are advocating for their value with employers as we're thinking about this future of work. So in 2025, they said top talent, they're not looking for ping pong balls, they're not looking for free snacks. I think when I went around, and I'm talking to hundreds of workers across the country, when they're thinking about HR benefits, they're thinking about being in the sandwich generation, they're thinking about caregiving for elders, they're thinking about caregiving for their children, and they're asking for different things from employers. And as I've done this work, I've gotten curious which employers are actually filling the needs that people and talent want today. If you look at this next stat, 46% of professionals say that they are thinking about quitting their job. People say, well, why is that? You've got 48% of people who say their jobs don't care about them. And since the pandemic, we know the value of when you actually have an employer who's invested not in just what you can do, cogs in the wheel, but invested in you as a whole person. So what we need to think about is beyond superficial perks, what are the ways that employers are deeply investing in their talent that are also showing a financial output and a dotted line to lift and business success on the business side. So when we talk about what employees are looking for, what we found out as I've talked to workers are purpose, thinking about autonomy. So really having the opportunity to think about innovating, making the role itself, themselves. Thinking about authentic culture that people can actually go in and blend in. You see more and more people who are even moving out of the bigger cities because they're making lifestyle changes, and work is part of that. And then when we look at the data, my organization, Future Forward Institute, put out a research report called The Competitive Advantage of the Win-Win Workplace. We saw that employers, 56% of them who had reimagined what their workplaces could look like, to think about hybrid work, to think about how they could reimagine benefits to actually supply employees what they need to be successful today, that what they had is a 56% increased value than their competitors. So we just did this survey in October. And the reason why we call this the win-win workplace, because it's a win for the employees, but especially it's a win for the business. So it's not doing this out of charity, but actually doing it out of good management practice. So out of these conversations, I created this win-win workplace framework that you see hopefully on the right side. There's 9 elements to how employers are investing in their employees. I say that there's lots of ways that people can be invested in. These 9 in particular, they show a dotted line to lift on the financial side. And for this audience, I really want to call out 3 of them to you that would be relevant for this conversation, this summit. So one is the understanding of centering worker voice. And what we saw when workers were centered, so not just asking their opinions on a 360 performance review, but when they were checked in regularly, quarterly, some employees are actually doing it monthly. What are we seeing from those employers? They're reporting that they are actually having an opportunity to integrate ideas from their employees, that their employees are coming up with new ideas around products and services. So it's really shifting what you think the role of business can be. The second thing that we're looking at is intersectional inclusion. And that's what I'm talking about, is just really take into account what are the lived realities of your employees and what does it take for them to get to work. So I'm based here, I'm based in Boston, and they say most commutes take up to 2 hours a week. And so when I'm talking to CEOs in Boston and they're talking about their return to office, I've said, it's not because people want to sit at home and twiddle their thumbs, right? It's because they're spending 4 hours in the car. And is there something that we can do in the workplace that would make, if they show up, do they need to show up 5 days? And if they do show up, what's going to make it worth their time? What are they doing in person that they can't do remotely? And then the third piece that we're looking at are career pathways and growth. One thing we saw with these win-win workplace companies, they have what I write in the book, chapter 7, a deep talent bench. And so what they really look at, instead of like going out to buy the best talent, they're also thinking about growing their own talent. So looking at that from some of the earliest ages, high school apprenticeships, down to working with community college and looking at more advanced roles, that what they're looking at is rethinking the actual resume. So these are the ones that when we look at 1, 2, and 3, if you're out there job seeking now, these are the things we should be mindful of, because these are the companies that are going to be better positioned for the future. So when we think about employer moves that work, one thought we saw was really embedding purpose into the job design. The second thing that we looked at is thinking about taking frontline managers and transitioning them to be frontline leaders. So what does that mean? If you think about, I think about my first management job, I was promoted to management because I was a great individual contributor, not because I was a good manager. Across all of the workplaces that we looked at, and we paired them into win-win workplaces and zero-sum workplaces, the win-win workplaces were actually training their managers to be managers. So what does that mean to be a manager and actually develop people? What does that mean to have your performance tied to that? One thing that companies saw was everyone's not built to be a manager, and I'm sure some of you all have stories around that too. And so win-win companies are really thinking about the value of design. They're thinking about these frontline leaders and managers. And then lastly, how can they be transparent about what career mobility looks like at the company? We know that employers today are creating the jobs of the future. Us as workers, we're thinking if we're working with you, one thing that you're going to help us with is think about that next career path and what that next job can be. And so some of the great companies that I've been looking at, one I'll tell you about is Intel. They've been doing a great job of working locally in their community to start apprenticeships from high school to build their own talent bench. Managers are doing deep management training to understand how they're keeping their best A players. So one thing that insight they had was to actually train the managers. And then the third is making it very transparent how you advance within the company and making sure it's clear that not only are you doing that on your own, but you actually have supports from the employer to help take care of that. So I'm going to end here when I'm thinking about the time left. When I talk about this lemonade stand, really what it means for me and for you all as you're thinking about the future of work, one is we need employers to think about doing things differently. And that's why I wrote this book, The Win-Win Workplace. What I've been surprised is I've been at these book signings and talking to many workers, something else has become really abundantly clear to me. It's that workers are looking for their own way to actually screen who they want to work for. And when I'm coming off of these 2 weeks, I say to everyone in front of audiences, we decide who we want to make rich. So as you're looking for your next opportunity, thinking about screening for some of these pillars, but also thinking about if you're with your hiring manager now, can you introduce these things to us? We can't assume that our managers have been trained. We can't assume that they share the same live reality with us. So really thinking about how we can help them help us is going to be the end of the day. So there's a couple parting words that I'd love to leave you with is, one, I would love for you to stay connected. Over next door, if you're at that conference, I'm going to be doing a book signing. Buy the book. Or if you have a manager who you think needs the book, I'm going to have my colleague Tony right here we would send that manager a book in that company, because no one gets rich by writing a book. We really want to share these ideas because we know that when talent employers are investing in their talent, they're going to do better by them. The second is we're going to have a win-win workplace discussion group that'll be run on LinkedIn. Again, we want your stories of what worked and stories of what didn't work, and that we're putting those into case studies. And then on May 5th and 6th in Chicago, we are doing the Win-Win Workplace Summit. We've got 80 employers who are investing in their talent along these pillars. And so if you're looking for your next opportunity, you should be there and should engage with them. So I just want to thank you again. Tony, wave to everyone. We'd love to stay in touch with you, and thank you so much for listening.